Ladies and gents, what up? Hey, Tony Barado here. So I just got done with the podcast I did. It's a little deep. It's important that we have kind of some objective thinking and, we understand kind of both sides of things and, we're not always one-sided. And that was this is me just kind of venting, talking a little bit about what's going on in the world right now. And even though I don't necessarily have a place to have an opinion on this, I think we all need to have an opinion on this as long as it's constructive and, it's not mean or aggressive. I think we all need to use whatever platform we have. I happen to have a podcast, and we all need to use this platform to educate each other and to talk to each other. And, I'm hoping this will stir up some conversations. After all these things happened, I realized that I wasn't being the best person I could be. So this movement and these protests and all this, it made me really realize, and the bigger picture is we're all human. We don't sometimes treat ourselves like humans. We treat each other a little bit differently. If you don't want to listen to it, I totally understand. It's a tough topic, and I don't normally do things like this, but, hopefully you guys will take a listen. I think if you are very confident about one side, you should learn about the other side because you might meet in the middle. And that's kind of what this podcast is about, is me talking through a couple ideas and a couple thoughts I had and just trying to meet in the middle and ask ourselves, maybe, just maybe, the other side might be right, or just maybe, this side might be right. Sorry if it's a little too deep for you, but enjoy.
Funny how.
Come here, though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you?
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Are you ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Hey, Tony Barado here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Barado Podcast. If you haven't followed me or if you don't know, who I am, I started a podcast about a year ago, and really the whole idea and the whole goal behind it is to create a platform where I can just kind of vent. I could talk about, health, wellness, a little bit of everything. And more importantly, I wanted to express myself and give myself an outlet to, share with you guys hopefully some insight. Maybe there's a couple things that I know about, like fitness, health, wellness. You hear me talk about that. You also hear me talk about some episodes about me dealing with Crohn's disease, which, I've heard has created some buzz around, some of my friends that maybe they have friends that potentially could be suffering from something similar. So I think that was kind of the goal at first. And, I always told myself I was going to keep my mouth shut when it comes to politics, religion, and controversial topics because, well, let's be honest, there's just too many sides to the coin, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of opinions out there, and I think we're in an interesting crossroads in our country to where there's social media has peaked. I think we all could agree with that. I think the next big platform we'll see that comes out is something besides social media, like maybe it's VR, maybe it's AR, maybe it's, something high tech that we don't even know. You got guys like Elon Musk talking about Neuralink, where we're putting chips in our heads, and they're already testing it out, putting chips in our hand. And, I think social media is really starting to peak, and we're going to evolve from this. So I think this is the worst it's going to get. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, and I say the worst it's going to get, but, really it's a great platform that we could share information. Unfortunately, there's a lot of companies, news organizations, even people, influencers, people with millions of followers that, share narratives, whether it's left, whether it's right, whether it's good, bad, ugly, informational, non-informational, conspiracy theories. That's what's kind of cool about social media is we can go to one place and see all these different opinions. But I think now more than ever, we need a little bit more of objective thinking. There's going to be a word that, and if you listen to my podcast, you hear me say it all the time, because I don't know everything. I only know a lot about a few things, like fitness, health, wellness. I know a lot about that stuff, but I know very little about, mathematics and chemistry and I didn't really pay attention in high school or college. So I don't know a lot, but I do know one thing, and that is I don't know a lot. That's the one thing I'm 100% confident about, is that I don't know a lot of information. And I like to think I'm pretty smart. I mean, I have multiple houses. I moved up in my company, what I think fairly quickly, and I like to think I'm pretty successful, but I definitely made a lot of mistakes. So, and I realized not a lot of people have that same mentality of themselves, meaning we don't know everything. You don't know everything. Even about the topics you do know, you don't know everything. Like I know a lot about fitness and health and wellness, but I know maybe 5% of what I could know, if that makes any sense. So some things we're really confident about, we don't really sit back and think to ourselves, we don't know shit. You don't know a lot about that topic. And you see that blasting on social media. I posted a couple things that were pretty objective. One was far left, one was far right. I got negatives on both sides. And I thought that was interesting because these are people that I know and love. And for some reason, they felt strongly that they knew more about one topic than I did. What was even more interesting is they were so confident about what they thought they knew that they thought I was wrong. And I never like to tell people that, except my wife occasionally when we argue. I'm usually pretty confident about that. Sometimes I'm wrong on that too, but in the moment, I don't believe that I'm wrong. One word that in particular I've been saying a lot lately on my podcast is the word maybe. The word maybe I think should be in our vocabulary a lot more. The word maybe is being unsure. It's not saying that you're right or I'm right. It's saying that it's possible. And I don't think we explore the it's possible enough. I think we're so set on possible and we're so convinced we let other people dictate our views, primarily in social media, to where you watch a video and you are so 100% confident that that is the correct information, no one can talk you out of it. And maybe it's one source. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, to where there's a lot of things going on with the protests and the riots and the looting and to defund the police and to get rid of police brutality. And there's a lot of things going on right now that I feel like we should all be a little bit more open-minded and a little bit more objective. And though I am not a black man, if you don't, know me, or if you're not watching this on YouTube right now, I am white. I am Caucasian, which I hate that word, by the way. It makes no sense. It's like, African American too. I have, some black friends that don't mind that word, but they're also kind of offended by it too, because why can't you just be American? And they kind of have a point there. Why are you African American? It's like my whole family is Italian and German. We're not Italian Americans because we live in America, right? So, I don't know. I think that's kind of a problem too. And by the way, why do we have to fill that shit out on a form? Why do I have to fill out that I'm Caucasian? Or why do you have to fill out that you're African American? Why is that still a thing? Maybe it's, legal and illegal. Maybe that's a good one to put down because that's neutral, right? Like, we all live in America. So if you're filling out this form, most likely you're at a hospital or a doctor or whatever, you're filling this out. But why is that dictating things? Interesting. I don't know. Anyway, we're getting off topic here. But the word maybe, I think, is something that is a step in the right direction. And that's kind of, hopefully what I'm going to talk a little bit about today, where I'm going to give you both sides of the coin. And some of you might not like it. It's I don't necessarily think I can talk to a lot about what's going on right now because, I am white. So obviously the protests and the police brutality and all that, I have never dealt with that myself. So it's hypocritical for me to even, it would be wrong for me to even begin to talk about that topic. But I think I want to kind of talk about this as if I am a human being, because we all are. We're all on Team Human, right? We should all really be in this thing together. Because that's what's happening here. Is, the black community is fighting to stand next to all Americans and not be prejudged and not be brutalized by the police more than white people, even though, again, on the other side of the coin, statistics will show us that, black on black crime is a thing. white on white crime is a thing. White on black crime is a thing. We're all gonna kill each other. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? Statistics will show that there are far better policemen than shitty ones. The vast majority. Just like the vast majority of black people and Hispanic people, the vast majority are good people. They're not criminals. They're just viewed that way sometimes. Why is that? Well, that's kind of what we're going to get into a little bit. Is I strongly believe it all starts at the house. How you're raised. Now, of course, one could say that, well, if you are brought up in a black community, that you're going to be raised a certain way, versus if you're brought up in a suburban white community. That could be accurate. But we have to really think to ourselves, why is that? Because I could tell you firsthand, my parents, which are now divorced, but my parents, when I was born, they both worked, and my mother quit her job while she was pregnant with me, so she could eventually be a stay-at-home mom, which she was for my entire life, and I'm very lucky. But my father worked his fucking ass off, and he worked 3 jobs. He had to close his company so he can work 3 jobs to get a steady income and insurance and all that. And my Orlando friends, again, will appreciate this. We lived in Lee Road, which some would be viewed as the ghetto or a bad area of town, however you want to politically say it. But it was a very bad area of town and still isn't the best area in Orlando by any means. But he had to work 3 jobs, and eventually we got out of there. Now, again, did he get better privilege because he's white? I don't know. That I couldn't tell you. All I could tell you is he worked 3 jobs. So I would say white privilege is a thing if he only worked 1 job and got paid the amount of 3 jobs. But he worked. He worked his fucking ass off. And because of that work ethic, I believe I was raised the way I was. And I made a lot of mistakes when I was a kid. I'll do another podcast later, but, in my teens and all the way into my 20s, I made a shit ton of mistakes. And that has nothing to do with them raising me. I was in a good place. I had quote-unquote privileges, but I fucked it up. Now, why did I fuck it up? Is it because of the color of my skin? No, it's because I fucked it up. I chose one path that was a stupid path to take. And I think sometimes that us individuals, no matter what color you are, sometimes we make the bad decisions, and that may lead to being in a poor part of town. That may lead into dealing drugs, criminal activity. Denzel Washington, you can Google this if you want. Denzel Washington had a great video to where
You can't legislate love. You can change laws, but you can't legislate people into loving you. That takes time, and it depends upon what's going on in their home. You can change the law, but if you go home and teach your son how to hate every day, doesn't matter what law has been changed.
he explained when he grew up, he had 3 friends, and he was the only one that was successful. Those other 3 friends that he grew up with in a poor community, in a poor black community, those 3 friends ended up getting over 20 years of jail time. He's the only one that was successful and made it out. But what's interesting about that story is, and he goes on to say, that he was the only one with a father. Those other kids didn't have fathers. So when you don't have a role model and someone to teach you, I could see how it's a bit of a challenge. And I get that. So what is the problem here? What exactly do we have to focus on? And that's kind of what I want to get into. I want you to see both sides of it, just like I have. I think we need to drive down to what the real issue is. And I think we all could agree that what happened to George Floyd was the last straw. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. A man was kneeled on until he lost consciousness and died. That's hard, man. That's hard to swallow. And, there's many instances where white cops did that to white people. And black cops did that to white people. And so that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, no matter who you are, whether you're the cop or the criminal, we need to treat each other better. And what that officer did was horrible. What I think was even more horrible, well, not more horrible, but just as bad, was what the other cops did, which was nothing. And that just goes to show us that we definitely do need to fix our police force. Maybe it's just in that city, maybe it's just in that state. We won't know until we dive into it and really go deep into the belly of the beast and fix this issue. Because it has been an issue that's gone on for many, many, many years, and we haven't really done anything about it. You know, and George Floyd was just the last straw. A lot of people say that he's a hero. A lot of people say that he's not. That's not us to decide. It's not about being a hero or not. It's about this has gone on for long enough. It's not about what he did or his past or his record. It's about the lack of compassion for our fellow human beings. That's the key. It's those police officers didn't care about that human being. You know, there's a great video that's going around where a group of white and black officers take down a white man who has schizophrenia and admits on video, this is all on a camera, he has schizophrenia and admits that he is hopped up on coke. And if you don't know, cocaine is a hell of a drug. That shit'll get you crazy. So if you're a schizo in on that, you're even more crazy. They pin him down to the ground and put his face to the grass, laughing, because he's wigging out. He's freaking out. So they're making jokes, and they're waiting for paramedics to come, and they're just holding him on the ground. And eventually he suffocates in the grass and dies. Suffocates and dies. White on white crime. Now what's crazy about that story is it doesn't matter if you're a cop, a criminal, a white guy, a black guy, an Asian guy. It doesn't matter what color you are. We need to treat each other better. You see it every single day, right? When you're driving around town, you look next to you, some douchebag cuts you off. What's the first thing you do? You scream and shout and yell. Call them words that you didn't even know were in your vocabulary. It's in us. It's in our DNA to be ruthless and mean. You know, in our DNA, we were supposed to be hunting saber-toothed tigers. Right? Living off the land. We're not used to being in boxes, caged up, driving around on the streets. We're animals, man. So there is some built-up aggression. But what's important is how we're raised and how we're taught, you know, to think about each other. And that's where this aggression comes from, this whole left and right thing, this political thing that we're into. That's what's so crazy about this whole situation. You know, there's a lot of companies out there and a lot of social media influencers and a lot of people out there that are talking about, you know, Black Lives Matter is a political stunt. And I even posted something on Facebook and Instagram if you follow me. But I even posted something where I stated Candace Owens, which I don't necessarily believe in her tactics and some of the things she says and does, but you know, she has some good points, and I think a lot of us do. Some of us have bad points and good points, but she did share something that was pretty interesting, which was if you go to blacklivesmatter.com, it's actually, and you press the donate button, it's actually funded by the DNC, so the Democratic Party. You could do all this on your phone. Don't trust me. Just go to Black Lives Matter, press donate, and you could dive into that, and you'll see there's even a couple of videos online about it. But what's crazy about that is there's a couple ways we could look at that, right? The problem that goes on is someone like Candace Owens, who has a large media influence, and the Hodge twins, which I really enjoy their stuff. And if you don't know about these people, I'll leave all the links to all the videos and everything that I'm referencing in the description. But I'm not a fan of what these people stand for, which is one side of the fence. You know, the Hodge twins are hardcore right? Candace Owens, hardcore right. You know, you look at a guy like Bill Maher, typically he's more left. A lot of these late shows, you could tell they vote for the Democratic Party, talking shit about the president and all that stuff, right? When you look at something like Black Lives Matter, if it is funded by the DNC, is it funded by the DNC because they started it? They started Black Lives Matter because they knew they could push that narrative? Maybe. See, said that word maybe again. Or is it because maybe when the movement started 4 or 5 years ago, after we started seeing a lot of these police brutality videos that came out specifically against black men, well, the black community rather. Did the Black Lives Matter start and then the DNC decided to start funding it because they wanted help? Maybe. I just don't know that we'll ever know for sure. And, of course, that's part of the problem. Politics, huge issue. We'll get to that later. The fact that these large influencers use their channel to push one specific narrative, it's very hypocritical in my eyes personally when they're talking shit about the DNC and they're pushing a narrative, let's say it's Black Lives Matter, but you're pushing the narrative that Black Lives Matter isn't a thing. So you're doing the same thing. You're not being objective. You're saying strongly, 110%, that Black Lives Matter is not a thing because it's funded by the DNC. 100%. You're all into that. So you can go all in and push a narrative, but they can't. That to me is what's so interesting. I'd prefer and respect somebody when they go, hey, you know, I noticed this Black Lives Matter thing. It's all funded by the DNC. But maybe, just maybe the Black Lives Matter started and the DNC decided to start funding it because they want to help. Maybe they just want to help. Or maybe they don't. Or maybe they want to use it to drive a narrative to help them win an election. Maybe. But let me ask you this. If they put millions and millions of dollars into Black Lives Matter, and they're using all this money to fund one specific narrative, and they push this narrative, are you saying that's going to swing people to vote for a specific person? I don't see how that's possible. Because if we're all smart human beings, and we do our research, and we actually want to vote, which we all should. I mean, it's our duty as an American to do that. Even though I don't really believe in the Electoral College and how that is. That's another podcast as well. If we all just educate ourselves, who gives a shit? Who's pushing what narrative? The problem is where we're getting that information. And I think that's the issue. I think we're just all so hooked on the right, the left, the right, the left. Why can't you be in the middle? Why can't you believe some things that the right says and some things that the left says? And that's the problem, I think, with the system. Got on a rant there. I do want to touch base a little bit on when someone says all lives matter. So, now whether you believe the Black Lives Matter is a narrative or it's a real thing, which it is, but no matter how it's being funded, I'm sure the vast majority of people there believe in the cause and just want equality and just want respect for the race, and that's what Black Lives Matter, I think, ultimately is about. But I wanted to mention this because a couple of my friends and family, when I would say these type of things, throughout all lives matter. So I'll put it very plainly because I don't want to steal. Emmanuel Acho has some great videos, and I encourage you that you check those out. I'll leave the links in the bio where he sits down and really kind of breaks down a lot of different great topics that he could do a lot better than me. But I think it's kind of funny how when we march for breast cancer, there's no protest that I've seen that protest, no, we need to focus on all cancer. Breast cancer? Fuck breast cancer. All cancers matter. Okay? So you can put that breast cancer thing to bed, Chief. No one's saying that. It's okay to have a movement focusing on one specific thing because it needs the attention. It needs the love right now. What about the Me Too movement? You know, it's okay to focus on one specific thing if they're not being treated fairly. And I think we all could agree that right now, Black Lives Matter. They do. We need to put the attention on it. We need to have these conversations. And Jane Elliott said this best. And if you don't know who Jane Elliott is, go to janeelliott.com. She's a freaking saint. She's incredible. But she said it best. She grabbed a group of white people, all different ages, put them in an auditorium, and said,
if you white folks want to be treated the way blacks are in this society, stand. Nobody's standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
And that's a very, very, very powerful statement. She also started the study, the Brown Eyes and Blue Eyes study. She started that after the death of MLK, and I watched that, and it'll definitely choke you up a little bit. But I think all of us that say all lives matter, it's just hard to imagine that you can't admit that there's a little bit of a problem, but you don't know what the problem is, and that's okay. If you don't think it's police brutality, that's okay. If you don't think it's discrimination, or if you don't think it's racism, or that's okay. But I think we all need to admit that we have a problem in the country, and that problem is pretty transparent, I think, and that is we're all on the same team here. We all need to take care of each other. If there's a group of people, no matter what the race is, no matter what they want to call themselves, if there's a group of people that are pissed off enough to protest, why aren't we getting behind them? I think we all need to stop. Let me rephrase. I think we all need to be a little bit more open-minded to understand both sides of things, to put yourself in someone else's shoes. That's something I don't think we do enough of. I know I don't. I realize now, especially after I'm 70-something episodes into this podcast, I'm realizing that I need to be more objective, and sometimes I get very one-sided. Even maybe during this podcast, I kind of get off a rail and, I rant and do my own thing. But, there's one thing that I was talking to one of my friends, and he's a black guy, which is very strange to me. Again, it's weird because now I would just say his name. I don't want to say his name to put him out on the podcast, but typically I would just say his name. But even this Black Lives Matter and protests and riots and however you want to say it, even this is making me kind of understand that how we've been doing things is kind of funky, right? Like the fact that we call someone black or African American or Caucasian or Hispanic, I get how it's relevant maybe if you're trying to, describe someone in a lineup, possibly. But you're probably thinking to yourself, at the end of the day, it's the rioting and the looting. It's not the way to do things. I don't know. Who are we to say? There's even tons of videos out there where there's black men and women that are crying, saying they've been dealing with this their whole lives and this is not the way to do things. They're telling the youth that, you shouldn't be rioting and looting. And I think there's a vast majority of people that are not looting, but obviously just people holding up signs is not good media coverage. So I think that kind of gets lost in translation there. The looters are probably just taking advantage of a situation. We see that all the time, right? When a team wins a Super Bowl, right, the whole city goes crazy and loots and riots, breaks windows and causes damage. This has just been going on for, weeks now, so it's starting to become real. Large amount of people that want to do good and want to make a difference. But the biggest thing I think we could take away from this is we all need to talk about it. That's why I really wanted to do this, was just to vent a little bit, because my wife's sick of hearing it, I'm sure, but also to kind of say that it's okay to have the conversation. Just because I'm not black and I'm not dealing with it, I think it's important that we talk about this, and we actually talk about it. We don't just post about it and fucking, say something stupid and, have arguments on social media. Call friends. Go out to dinner, hang out, have constructive, critical thinking conversations. I would even encourage, especially the black community. I believe that there does need to be change. Whatever that looks like, that's up to the community to decide what you feel is best. If you ask my opinion personally, I think it all starts at the house. Family raised. I think each of us maybe have a chip on our shoulder, maybe. We need to get away from that. I'll let Morgan Freeman say it. You can Google this, Morgan Freeman on racism. But someone asked Morgan Freeman if he believes in Black History Month, if we should have it. And he says no. Morgan Freeman said no. And I think it was 60 Minutes. And he goes, you're white, but what's your background? And the guy goes, Jewish. And he goes, do you want a Jewish month? And the guy goes, no. He's like, well, I don't want a Black History Month. We should teach one history in school, and that's American history, which should include Black history, and Jewish history, and Italian history, and all the histories. Everybody that stepped foot on America, we should know about, no? Our background, why not? And I think once we get to that place, and we stop talking about, specific things, that's the challenge, I think, with a lot of these movements, is when you become too far on one side, you're ruining the cause. I think if we get to a place to where we can all think to ourselves, you know what? We're all human. We're going to make mistakes. There's going to be bad people. There's going to be good people. But if we can all just do our best and educate ourselves and to do what we think is right, don't do something just because it's your political agenda. Don't do something because your religion told you to do it. Do something because that's what's right in the moment. In my opinion, that's what I think. Remember, there's a lot of people that wouldn't be allowed on this planet right now if we followed certain religions. Especially in this country. So, I don't know, is religion bad? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of great benefits to organized religion. But, there's a lot of examples of bad religions out there too. So who are we to say what's right and what's wrong? That's why I think it's important we don't go off a belief system that we don't necessarily see every day. And I'm not saying just religion, I'm saying politics. Right now, today, when you look at another human being across from the table, it doesn't matter whether they're pro-choice or not pro-choice, whether they voted for Trump or not. None of that matters. We're both on this earth, and we have a lot of knowledge that we can give each other. But if we're not having constructive conversations, and we're not being objective, and we're not looking at each other with the possibility that you might be right and I might be wrong, if we don't do that more, we're going to be spinning our wheels here. Because let me tell you what's happening out there, and you see it. People are protesting, rioting, looting, and remember, those are different things. People that are protesting is good. That's what we need. People that are rioting and looting, I think we all could agree, not so good. But the difference here is we're talking about it. People need a voice. Because there's a group of our humans on this earth. A group. Whatever you want to call that. Black Lives Matter, black community, black people, or just call them a group of human beings. There is a group of human beings out there that does not like another group of human beings. And that's our police force. We all have the ability to make change here. We need to stop thinking to ourselves that it's only politics that can make change. That's not true. In fact, I would even venture to say it's absolutely impossible to make change. A great example is President Obama. The first black president. I think one of the best well-spoken presidents we've ever had. Motivational, still to the day. Just a great, overall, seems like a good dude. Spoke well. How you would want a president to speak, right? But if you look at the facts, what exactly did he do for the black community? They still have the same rights as they do today. I don't think one person can make a change like that. It's up to us. If you're upset about something in your life, the president is not going to decide tomorrow whether or not that's going to get fixed. Nor is your mayor or your governor or even your family. It's up to you. It's up to each individual person. If you don't like what your life is, change it. Make a decision to change it. I was also talking to a buddy of mine that was raised in a poor community. And he says to me, he goes, I just had it rough. I was raised this way, I was raised that way, and he's giving me all these different examples, and then he gives me another example that his father and mother were kind of going through some hard times when he was a kid, and he didn't have the best examples, so he turned to violence, drugs, hanging out with the wrong crowd. I did that as well, but it took me probably till I was like 15, 16 when my parents got divorced. I started rebelling, and I made some horrible decisions, but I didn't have to make those bad decisions. My parents did everything they could. But even if they didn't, even if they did a bad job, I think in America, where we all live, some of us, worldwide folks, what up? We all have kind of the same hand. Whether it's a poor hand or a shitty hand or a good hand or a bad hand or a rich hand, I don't know if that's really relevant. I mean, sure, if you want to make a lot of money, yes, that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be harder for you if you come out of a poor community, like I did. You're not going to make six figures anytime soon. I'm not going to make six figures anytime soon. But why do we dictate our lives off that, though? That's the hard part to understand. Why do you think to yourself, just because I'm in a poor community, I'm going to have a shitty life? What, because you can't buy the new iPhone? Because you can't get that cool Cadillac? That brand new Lamborghini? Okay, if that's important to you, then you need to work your fucking ass off to get it. I'm not getting a Lambo anytime soon, even though I want one. That's not my goal in life. It has nothing to do with my skin color. We all have to apply ourselves. And I think we're given the tools to do that. There's tons of examples of all different races, including Obama, who became the first black president. Was he privileged when he was a kid? He was put on this earth, and he made it to the top. And I think we all can, if we want to. It's just a matter of what we're going to do, the choices we're going to make. Do we all want to work 3 jobs like my father did? And do we want to work at grocery stores and McDonald's and fast food chains? Is it going to suck? Yeah, it's going to suck. Is dealing drugs easier? Of course. You're going to make more money dealing drugs than you are working 3 jobs. But if you choose to deal drugs, and you happen to get pulled over by a police officer, and you have drugs on you, now you're putting yourself at risk that you put yourself in. Maybe that police officer is a little bit more racist than the other guy. Maybe he's going to lay hands on you, and he shouldn't do that. But maybe he is. I'm not going to be disrespectful. And he still might put his hands on me. But I'll have to deal with that when I get to court. And that's the type of thinking we need to have. We need to remove the chips from our shoulders. We need to treat each other with respect, loyalty, dignity, positive thinking, critical thinking, intelligence. If we treat each other all like that, and that's going to be a very, very hard process to do. But I feel like if we do it, that might be the easiest way. I mean, you got to remember all this is going down after we were all stuck at home for 4 months. Right? We're all stuck at home for 4 months not doing shit. And then, there's a small group of people that, are assholes that just want to go out and loot and steal and take TVs and take a lot of cool stuff because maybe they lost their job. Maybe they just want to steal some stuff because they've been stuck at home for 4 months. I think the large amount of people are really trying to do good with all these protests. And hey, listen, I mean, we're talking about it, right? Look on social media, there's been a huge outcry of support to the black community. Everything from, the video games that you play have posts that say Black Lives Matter. Even the NFL has released a statement saying that, they're with it. And U.S. Soccer has even told each team member to kneel during the national anthem, which is obviously Cap started that. Everyone might have laughed at it, and even me in the back of my head, I was always thinking to myself, that's disrespectful. Why is he doing that? But I've really changed my thinking. What he's doing for a good reason. If you don't believe in that reason, that's okay. But don't judge someone if they're doing the right thing? Or what constitutes a right thing? How do we know what's right and what's wrong? Besides common sense, I don't have the answer. The only thing I could say is, if it injures or hurts someone else, I would imagine that's a bad thing. These protesters are walking the streets, with signs, shouting out Black Lives Matter. That's a good thing, I think. Riots, looting, that's a bad thing. Kaepernick kneeling a few years ago during the national anthem, it didn't hurt anybody. I think it was a good thing. I didn't back then. I gotta tell you. I thought it was disrespectful to the flag, but now I get it. And again, you don't even have to believe it. You don't have to like it. That's not the point here. Now I get he did it because he just wanted to be heard. He wanted to be in the news. He wanted people to talk about it. And people did talk about it for a while. And then now, obviously, with George Floyd, this has become the last straw. And these riots and looting and protesters and, some good came out of this, some bad came out of this. Military's getting deployed in some cities. But we're talking about it. It's getting noticed by all races. And I think that's the point of this. And some of you might be saying to yourself, well, I'm not racist. It's not my fault. Why do I have to deal with this? Well, I would challenge you and say, we know for sure that the earth is polluted. We know that. We're the cause of it because of what we put in the air and what we put in the oceans and the ground. These are facts. Science. Can't get away from it. Do you buy plastic? When you see someone buy plastic, do you say anything? I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. The black community is dealing with an issue right now. Just because you're not racist, just because you're not black, doesn't mean you can't help your neighbor. Doesn't mean you can't warn them to not buy plastic. It's going to help the environment. By you helping your fellow human, you're going to help us all. There's always going to be bad people. But I think more of us are good than bad. We just don't give each other a chance to show it. It's just tough when you watch some of these videos. All races. Getting abused by police. It's tough to watch. And I also think it's an ego thing. I got buddies that are cops. All over Florida. All of them different. Some of them are ex-military. Some like guns. Some don't. But I don't think we put ourselves in their shoes either. Like I've told you for a while now, for over 30 minutes. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the black community. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of cops. No matter what race you are right now, I think it's fair to say that you could not pay me enough, me personally, enough to go out there and risk my life every day. That every day could be the last day that I see my wife, that I talk to my mother or my father. You couldn't pay me enough. You don't want to know what they get paid if you don't know already. It's worse than teachers, and teachers don't get paid shit. These guys and girls are risking their lives every day to protect us. If something happens to us in the street, God forbid, we don't call for a friend. We want the cops. There's a lot of good cops out there. But I believe in what our friend Chris Rock said, which was, you can't have a few bad apples. You can't have a few bad pilots. But they exist. They're out there. And I think they're always going to be out there until we change the system. And we change what's going to help our fellow human. And there's definitely needs to be more vetting, more psych evaluation. It's just one of those things where I strongly believe that if you just stop watching mainstream media and take away your political views for a second and don't make this about a Republican and Democrat thing. Just get that out of your head. Try it for a couple seconds here. If you have a neighbor, no matter what race he is or she is, and you hear something going on next door, do you help that person? If the answer is no, then I think you need to change your way of thinking. I know I do. Because my neighbors, I honestly don't know my neighbors. But if I heard like a gunshot or if I heard something going on back there, I would definitely call the police. I would try to do everything in my power to make sure, my house is protected, but also I don't want them to get injured. Not because I don't know them. It's because they're human. Like, imagine if something happened to your neighbor and you knew you could do something to stop it, but you chose not to, and that person died. To live with that guilt. Oof. That's what's happening to the black community right now. They're our neighbor, and they need our help. And whether you believe in the cause or not, they're human. They're just people like you and me. And I just don't know if the black community can do this without us. We should all just be very, very careful how we have these conversations, meaning we need to get out of the habit of this is a political thing. And we need to start thinking to ourselves that it is possible. There is police brutality. Not just towards black people. There's tons of videos. I would even challenge to say more videos. White policemen and women injuring and hurting and not doing certain protocols that you feel are the right steps. And maybe we need to change those protocols. But it's also very scary for those people too. What if one day you woke up, you're a police officer, you go to a routine traffic stop, and you pull someone over for speeding. They pull out a gun on you. They shoot that gun at you. They miss you. They get arrested, they go to jail. The next day, aren't you going to be a little bit on edge? Imagine if that was every single day you're on edge. And every person you run into is pissed off, disrespecting you. You're going to snap one day. We all do it. Don't say you don't do it. You fucking do it. You do it at your job. You do it when you're driving. Someone cuts you off. Maybe in the morning you don't really care because you're tired. Someone cuts you off, you say, ugh, fucking Mondays. But then the second person does it. Now you're pissed. You can't really shrink because you're stuck in that vehicle the whole time. These policemen and women, they get frustrated. Of course. Because they're probably thinking to themselves, they're fighting every single day to keep us safe. And there's a very few, small percentage of people that they run into on a daily basis that are dickheads, that are assholes, that are disrespectful, that are criminals, that are drug dealers, that are killers. So they have to go in every single day with either two mindsets. One, completely lackadaisy and not really give a fuck, but then something bad can happen to them. Or they can go in super aggressive just to be safe. You just have to look at it from both sides. You have to understand that police officers do have a tough gig, but you also have to understand the black community has had it rough. We're all here. We're all alive, man. We're all doing well. Some people are poor. Some people are wealthy. Some people live middle class. Some people are homeless. The thing we all have to understand is we're all able to change things like that. If you live in a poor community, you could totally get out if you wanted to. It's going to be tough. For sure it's going to be tough. But are we going to bitch and complain? We have to fix the system. I think it all starts with community. Taking care of your neighbor. If you're in a poor community, no matter what race it is, if you're in a poor community and you get out and you become successful, are you going back to that poor community to enrich that community, to educate that community? Probably not. Because usually when you're in a poor community, what do we typically do? I'm guilty of it. We get out of a poor community, we go to a good community, and we say, fuck you, poor community, and we never go back there again. If we came from that community, we should invest into that community. We should build a new home in that community. We should volunteer in that community. We should educate in that community. Are we doing that? I can honestly say the answer is no. For a lot of us. Kevin Hart has some great foundations that he works with. He's, few and far between. That guy's a beast. He's a great example of a human being. That dude educates young kids about how to invest money, portfolios, real estate. But, no one taught me anything about real estate. And my father and my mother, they're very educated people. They're very smart. They're very passionate. They're entrepreneurs. But I had to teach it myself. No one told me it was a good idea. I never listened to that. I just knew that I wanted to get into it because I knew it could make me money. It has nothing to do with my race or my background or any type of privilege or lack thereof that I got. It's because I chose that as opposed to being a criminal and making money. You ever see Breaking Bad? Yeah, you can make a shit ton of money. We all get it. Some of us look at that and say it's fiction. Other people look at that and say, that's a great idea. I need to do that. I need to sell drugs because I want to make that money illegally. You have just made a bad decision. And not only have you made a bad decision, but any kids that you have, now they're going to be raised in an environment where you're doing that. And so on and so forth. And that's how shitty communities are formed. With a lack of education, all hustle, all talk, all street smarts, no book smarts. I think it's important you need to have both. You need to have street smarts and you need to have book smarts. But you can't get the book smart in the streets. You got to get out of the streets, man. You got to educate yourself. You got to apply yourself. You got to surround yourself by positive people. You can't spend all your days doing stupid shit that's not going to get you ahead in life. You got to have some goals. We all just need a reset. One great thing that came out of all these protests and riots and looting is it's really opened up, I know my eyes, but I think it's opened up a lot of people's eyes about, how the system is ran. And by system, I mean, police forces, communities, the rich, the poor. You look at our entire system. It's really gotten me thinking a lot, actually, about everything. It's funny that 600 years ago, we started tracking witches in Europe, and we thought that was a great idea. 400 years ago, up until I think 1860s, when the 13th Amendment was passed, we thought slavery was a great idea. Today we think the prison system is the best it could be. Is it? They're all privatized, making tons of money. They have to hit quotas and goals and percentages of capacity. Is that the best way to have a prison? That companies are incentivized to keep people inside? Should police officers have quotas? Should they have to have a certain amount of stops that they have to get? Do they need to be pulling people over for going 5 miles over the speed limit? Should we change that? Isn't that the biggest problem? Is the system. How we're approaching things. It's because we're using emotions. We're using emotions to fight some of these things. Anger. Is that the best way to do it? I don't know. I don't think it is. I'm going to dedicate a lot of time doing more research and educating myself a lot more on what I can do. Even if it's on a micro level, how I can help. Because I think we all need to do that. I think we all need to figure out what we can do individually in our communities to make ourselves better, make each other better. I just think we got a lot of work to do. Racial discrimination and police brutality are definitely things to consider, but I think it's the tip of the iceberg. I think as a nation, we've gotten away with a lot of stuff for so long that the higher-ups are just sticking to their guns. They're not going to change unless we demand change. And what you're seeing out there, the riots, the looting, the protesting, that's people demanding change. And whether you believe in those reasonings or not, I think hopefully, like me, it's opened up your eyes to understand that, maybe there is something wrong. Maybe it's not just about police brutality, and maybe it's not just about that. Maybe it's about the way we're living, right? Like, is everything fair for each other? How we vote, does that make sense? Racial discrimination and police brutality are definitely a thing right now, for sure, no question. And it's the vehicle to get this conversation going. But I think we got to look at our country, and we really got to kind of reassess how we do a lot of things. Should it be one person running this country? Whether you're left or right. If you vote Republican, should you be able to have a couple Democratic thoughts? And vice versa? I think so. Who's to say not? Why can't we be more objective? Why can't we just ask ourselves, maybe I believe in a little bit about what Trump says, but maybe I believe in a little bit about what Joe Biden says when he can get out a full sentence. But it's okay to have both those thoughts, right? What's the problem with that? And come election time, can we express that? Is there a place in the polls that we can express that? Not independent. What can we do? Just my opinion, I don't think there should be one president. I think it's a tough job. But the founding fathers, they shaped our nation, and there was only 8 of them. There's over 320 million people in the country right now, just in the U.S. So can't we change the country? They were able to change it with 8 people. We have 328 million people that can make a difference. We need to stop pointing fingers. We need to get on the same team. We need to get on Team Human. Take care of each other. Understand each other. Talk to each other. Don't argue. Talk. Learn. At the end of the day, I think that's how we're all going to get better. And maybe, just maybe, we can all make the world a better place. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Kind of a deep podcast, but I hope you guys got some clarity out of it. I know it helped me. Until next time, thanks for listening.